Well, maybe a good place to start is with the concept of sessions. Now, I've tripped over sessions over the years. I know so many people have, and it's a concept that's unique to Capture One. So why don't we start by taking some of the quick portraits I did of you just a little earlier today, and this will allow us to deal with the whole side of importing from a card. We'll do tethering later. So importing from a card and setting up a session. And what's a session? What the hell is a session?
A session. Oh, right. Let's jump right in there.
That's fine. That gives us something to import into the computer.
Fantastic. Let's actually start by putting a session together before we bring the card in. From the file menu or from the icon we have on the top right of the library, we can create a new session. So the freshest way to start this would be with a new session.
What's
I'll call
a
this
session?
Michael.
Call it Michael.
I'll call it Michael.
What is a session?
A session is a container that can hold all of the elements of a particular shoot or an import together. A session can be both tethered and untethered. With a tethered session, there's a capture folder. With an untethered session, you can organize it through the import tool. In my opinion, I typically always work with the capture folder, even if I'm importing from a card. But like many of the things that Phase One do, this is very analog, very organic. I can look at any other session, and I can bring in file folders that aren't even from an import I've done here. They can be from a hard drive, they can be from a network. I can view all kinds of different images, but I can still have a particular session up. So I think that's what people find confusing.
Is it fair to say that a session, when you create a new session, you've created one here called Michael, and you've said, where is it going? It's going into users shared. What the system will do, what C1 will do, is it will create a series of subfolders.
Correct.
Within a directory named Michael.
Within a directory named Michael, and the logic is controlled by, is it a tethered or a non-tethered session? Common to both is the trash, the output, and a move to or selects folder. However, the capture folder doesn't appear if you do an untethered session, but the structure, the container, if you will, is the same.
Okay.
Right? One other thing that I'm very cautious of, open in new window. This is a new function Phase One have set up where you can have multiple sessions open at the same time. For most intents and purposes, I don't like to do that, but you can drag and drop between these sessions. They've added a whole extra level of flavor to what you can do with these. So let's start off by unchecking this. So we're not opening this as a separate session. And now that our session is created, the name of the session shows up at the top, Michael, and we're ready to import. Let's put the card in. Essentially, once the card shows up in the desktop, the application picks it up and it automatically comes in. There's a certain amount of logic preset here. So in the previous input, I'd said Walter Borchenko was the copyright.
No,
I didn't photograph this.
Copyright.
So we'll put your name in here.
Okay. Okay, so this is like, is this a template that you can create, or it just remembers the last things that you
automatically remembers the last things that you've done. You can actually select individual images. You can just say import all.
Right.
We have a number of little tools across the bottom. I'm very cautious. Everybody has their own approach. I do not erase images after copying. I always confirm that I've got them. In a lot of cases, I'll not want to remove those until I've definitely backed up.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own approach there. Notify when done I find very important. I'd like to know that.
And eject.
If we start from the top, this is something I've been using already. And typically, you don't always see the options that are available here. I'll just turn them off. Right now, it's seeing that we're coming from the Phase One card that we just inserted.
The card happens to be named Phase One.
Happens to be named
Could be
Phase
named
One,
Fred.
Could be anything.
Right.
Could be anything. But I could also select a folder here. I can import from a hard drive. You could use a device that your cards are dumped into in the field and then connect that and source from there. This is
like a hyperdrive or an Epson 6000 or one of those devices.
They're all available. It's just an open interface here. So this is not about having to have a card reader. It can be from anything.
Gotcha.
You can even be from a network, through Ethernet. Automatically it's picking up my capture folder and saying, do you want to put it in that folder? Do you want a subfolder? Maybe I want one with date or name. In this case, I'll say name, and we can call the name. There's an extra box here.
Call it Walter Portrait.
We'll call it Walter Portrait. automatically then a subfolder is created in the capture folder, and it immediately organizes things in a way that makes sense.
So really what, I guess the core concept behind a session is C1 is automatically creating a directory and subdirectories, and when you say do a certain action such as import a file or mark this for future use, it automatically will copy the file, move the file to the appropriate named directory.
Exactly.
So you don't have to deal with things at the Finder level or at the operating system level.
It's really also an extension of that, because the assumption is you're not just shooting one card. You'll have 2, 3, 4, or if you're in a tethered session, you're shooting a whole sequence. It keeps that logic, so you don't have to think about it and do it again and again.
Gotcha.
It's there. It's done. So the first element was, where's it going? Where's it coming from? How do I want it handled with these subdirectories? Next is naming. And again, lots of options. Each one of these separate menus has a little triangle, and most people don't even ever try and click on these things to see what's there. I have the potential with this to reset counters, change increments, play with different elements. Sometimes a reset is the simplest way. Just reset it, start again. There are quite a number of different formats available, and again, it's about what works for this workflow or that workflow. What are you comfortable with? You choose what you'd like to do. I keep it simple.
I keep it simple as well.
I just bring it in and I deal with all that later.
With the name that the camera has created.
Exactly. I don't think about that. I just let it go.
Gotcha.
Under the metadata, not only can you put a name in for copyright, you can put a caption in. Again, I keep it really simple. I deal with this all later. So at this point,
by the way, since I'm absolutely convinced this will be a prize-winning photograph, finish my name in the copyright field.
There we go. We've got it all in there. Did you want a caption in
No, we don't need a caption.
Do we want award-winning portrait?
No, we don't need that.
All right, let's bring it in. So import all.
Yep.
We'll automatically select them all. I'd just like to point this out, because I've had people who've contacted me about this. If I click on a given image, it says import one. If people didn't know that, accidentally clicked on a single image, they might not realize that they've just done this.
And that's why you don't want to have erase images after copying.
Absolutely, because these things can happen.
Yeah.
In this case, I would automatically select them all.
So Command A or Control A.
Control A, exactly.
Okay.
And away we go.
Now, while these are importing, let's just cover a couple of points. We're talking about this as C1 or Capture One, both names appropriate. But what we are dealing with here is Capture One version 5 point something. 5 has now been out for a couple of months as we're filming this, and over time it's going to be 5.0 something, and then it'll be 5.1 and 5.2. And also we should mention that we're working obviously on a Mac, but that with a few small exceptions, which we'll touch on a little later as time goes on, the Mac version and the Windows version are virtually identical.
They are virtually identical, probably for the first time ever. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's great.
I think it's also important to mention that a lot of times I'll just say Capture One. I know you'll just say Capture One, and we're not. It's the Capture One is the name of the actual application. The version number is the version 5 or whatever. So it's important to know that we'll continue using Capture One as we're speaking, right?
Right. C1, Capture One.
Yeah.
Okay, so your import completed successfully. Thank goodness.
Well, there's the message, but at the same time, it also included an activities window, which gives you a heads up all the time what's happening. If you have a lot of imports, it can be really useful because it keeps things very, very clean.
Right.